Angela Hill taking on Emily Ducote, and we look at this fight for Emily. I mean, she fought back in 2017 in a rematch, because she fought in 2016 against Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. Lost the first one by decision, lost the second one by submission, wasn't able to capture that flyweight belt over with Bellator. So then she kind of has some more fight. She loses. She ends up in Invicta. She beats two former UFC fighters. She wins the Invicta belt. And then she comes into the UFC and faces off against Angela Hill's main training partner, and Jessica Penne, and looked great. Looked just like Emily Ducote should, and did everything that she does in her fights, and she won that fight handily. So she looked really good in that one against Jessica Penne, but the difference is, for Penne, it's the really weird, sneaky takedown attempts and the weird longness of her game. Even though she's the former Invicta atomweight champ, she really does utilize her grappling very well in this division. And if you look at it for Hill, also a former Invicta strawweight champ way back when, but if you do look at it for her, it really is her Muay Thai in her game that gets it done. So somebody like Hill, with the kicks, with the variety of attacks that she has, could pose a big problem for Ducote, who has really good boxing training out of American top team Oklahoma City, and she has great leg kicks as Emily Ducote in her fights.
And she's also the more likely to go for a takedown in this matchup, I would say. I know Angela Hill has shown some wrestling in her back pocket throughout some of her career, but Emily Ducote is very much a wrestle boxer, even though a lot of her highlights, you think of her just being on the feet, but she is not a zero on the mat whatsoever. She does have effective grappling, and I definitely think she is the more likely, like I said, to go for a takedown between these two. But Angela Hill is always a very interesting test for any fighter. It feels like every time we break down an Angela Hill fight, it's, hey, she's fighting an up-and-coming prospect. How are they going to look against a rangy volume striker? And you kind of look at her record. She's going to win some of those fights. She's going to lose some of those fights. But in recent years, I feel like her volume has started to taper off, and she isn't necessarily the crazy volume puncher she once was. Now, against Ducote, it really does come down to, how is Ducote going to deal with the range and the volume? I think she's going to be able to counter it effectively from the outside. I really do. Now, again, with Hill, it always comes down to, can her volume do enough to get to the judges' scorecards at the end of it? And maybe she'll kind of get the Maria Moreau's factor, where it's, hey, are they landing? Maybe, but she's doing something at least. She could have that factor. I just think Emily Ducote's a high enough level fighter to, when she notices Angela Hill throwing a lot of strikes, crash that distance, use her clinch, and when she isn't throwing a lot of strikes, she'll be able to work behind her own jab.
Now, I disagree with you a bit, and here's the reasons being. I mean, for Angela Hill, you look at it and you say the volume can taper, but two examples. The fight against Amanda Lemos, where she loses it, but she gets dropped in the first round. Isn't in a 10-8. Round 2, round 3, she takes over. Lemos tires. And then if you look at it for Hill, her last time out against Lupe Godinez, Hill's like a 3-1 underdog in that fight. Loses the first round, and then rallies in round 2, rallies in round 3. I thought Godinez won the fight, but regardless, Hill gets the win on her record. So it's another opportunity where she gets to turn away a prospect. For somebody like Lupita Godinez, it's always crashing forward, always boxing, mixing in her wrestling. But once Godinez couldn't get the takedown anymore, she did struggle. For Ducote, though, it really is, again, high guard, a lot of boxing combinations. But the thing that I like out of her is she'll throw that right as a bit of a check to the body to try and get you thinking. She'll throw a left hook there. And then again, like I said, the leg kicks, I mean, 116 out of 205 in her significant strikes against Jessica Penne. 51 of them were leg kicks, and she defended 8 of the takedowns. She became a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt before that Penne fight. And do I think Ducote's better at Jiu-Jitsu than Jessica Penne? I wouldn't be here to say that, but to have the takedown defense, to throw almost half of your strikes to be leg kicks, it's a huge part of your game to slowing down your opponent. And Angela Hill is a very movement-based fighter with a lot of her volume.
And I think Godinez is a lot more predictable, especially on the feet, than a fighter like Ducote, and that's why Hill was able to have success as that fight went on. I think Ducote from the outside is going to be able to manage at least the distance and some of those strikes that Hill employs into the cage. I'll be interested to see, though, if Hill goes for a lot of front kicks. Remember when Tony Ferguson was in his prime, throwing a lot of those front kicks, keeping his opponent at bay so they weren't going for takedowns, and then being able to set up his own shots. If Hill was able to use a game plan like that, I could see her having some success, but I do think the well-roundedness of Emily Ducote is going to be a big factor in this matchup, and I do think she'll get past the classic Angela Hill skill check that every single prospect has to go through.
I think it's going to be a really, really close fight. It's going to be one where you're kind of on the edge of your seat. For Ducote, she opened -120, -124. For Hill, open +100. +102. We have a look at those handy-dandy Tapology votes, and I clicked out of it, but we're doing it live. So we have a look. It's Hill versus Ducote, fight number 8 on the slate. I'm going to say over under 70% for Gordinha.
I think they'll be over.
I think they're going to be over. 61% out of 1,926 total votes going with Ducote. 87% by decision for the 39% that have Hill. 88% by decision. So a lot of people going with decision. Cool Banana Boy saying Hill isn't great, but she's very consistent. She'll get this one, and she very well could too.
She could, but again, I like Ducote in this one.
I like Ducote with the steadiness. The leg kicks, I think, are going to be a big factor, but if Angela Hill wins this fight, you talked about it. Teep kicks, front kicks, and her clinch game. Her clinch game's huge. Ducote likes to clinch to kind of take a second to then either go for a takedown or disengage and throw her boxing combinations again. Whereas Hill uses it offensively, and she has a really good job at getting that plum clinch and kind of wrenching away and then landing her own damage. So watch out for Angela Hill in this matchup, but both of us going with Gordinha, Emily Ducote.